Welcome to People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's People, Power, and Politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.
Good day. Today in the studio with us, we have Carl Diggs, who is a longtime revolutionary, a follower of revolutionary leader Bib Avakian, co-founder with Cornel West of the Stop Mass Incarceration Network, and a representative of RevComp. So I wanted to get into the unfortunate subway lynching of Jordan Neely. Your thoughts?
Look, my thoughts were this was a cold-blooded murder. You've got this ex-Marine who walks up behind Jordan Neely as he is desperately talking about his conditions, not having food, not having water, being fed up. And the Marine comes behind and puts a chokehold on him and then continues choking him until he's choked the life out of him. Then the police come, they talk to the Marine and let him go, even though it's very clear that he killed this man. I call it a lynching because it reminded me of the way in which whites, especially in the Old South, would kill black people for any perceived slight or for no reason at all and get away with it. And that's what we're dealing with here. And people have to look at it as that and then understand that we have to say we will not accept this. And when I say we, I don't just mean black people. No one who has any heart for humanity should accept this going down.
So how do we go forth about showing that we are not going to stand for this?
Well, I think it's very important that people took to the streets. I mean, I did a protest right outside that subway stop several days after, and people need to stay in the street and demand that this Marine be charged for the crime that he carried out, which was murder. At the same time, we have to see that there is a larger criminal in this picture, and that's the system that we live under. Because why are people like Jordan Neely, so many of them black and brown, who don't have anywhere to live, don't have access to food and water, living in those desperate conditions? And it's because for this system, this capitalist imperialist system, they have no future whatsoever for many, many people. And it's not just here in New York City, it's all across the country. So we have to refuse to accept this murder, but we also have to look at the murderous system that we're up against, the one that has no future except for police, prisons, and poverty for so many of our young people. We need a revolution to stop our people being put in these kinds of situations, to stop the way in which our people are subjected to brutality and murder by police, but also by people who take it upon themselves, and especially in this case, we're talking about white people who take it upon themselves to carry out criminal activities among black people and often get, a pat on the back and let go home about it. We need a revolution to get rid of this system and to bring into being a different system, one where people's lives are not tossed on the scrap heap the way that Jordan Neely was and so many other people are. And also a system, because this isn't the only horror about this system. If it was, that would be reason enough to want to get rid of it through revolution. But it's not. It's the same system that is destroying the environment of the very planet that we live on, is dragging the world to the brink of global war between nuclear combatants, the way that the U.S. is through this proxy war that it's waging with Russia over Ukraine, the same system that is treating immigrants. I've watched the, immigration police on the border, and they're acting like the old slave chasers in the way that they deal with immigrants. It's taking away the rights of women. All of this needs to be stopped, but you can only stop it through revolution, because the Democrats are not going to save you from this. In fact, the Democrats preside over much of it. The Republicans, who are fascists, then that's real. That's what Donald Trump is, have a horrible future in store, even more horrible. But the Democrats have no answer for the masses of people, because they represent the same system that is responsible for these horrors. We need a revolution. That's what I spoke to in the article that I have on the website, revcom.us. That's REVCOM.us, where I speak to the lynching of Jordan Neely. Our site also carries other articles about the lynching of Jordan Neely, as well as articles about what's happening in the country and the world and what needs to be done about it, and articles about the revolution that we need to end these horrors once and for all.
So, Mr. Dix, the article you mentioned in that article, this is Paul Philip here, about even more blood on the hands of Eric Adams, the Black Giuliani, and the system he enforces. And you also, speak about why is the system unwilling and unable to provide a decent future for millions of Black and brown people like Jordan, who's suffering from mental illness, and they're relegated to live on the streets and in the shadows. So can you speak on that, please?
Yes, and that's a couple of important points that I get into in this article. One is the system cannot provide a way for many, many of our people, and especially Black and brown people, and especially young ones, to have decent jobs that could survive, that could support families, because those jobs, the factories that used to provide those jobs, have been moved around the world where they can pay someone much, much less than they would have to pay a worker here, and through that make more profit. But that leaves people with no future in this system. They have, in order to, boost their profit margins, they have cut social services greatly. And that started decades ago, all the way back to Ronald Reagan, when they emptied some of the mental health institutions with people who needed mental health care, but they didn't want to provide it because that money could be used somewhere else more profitable. That's what we're dealing with. And the reason I brought in Eric Adams is because as mayor, he has represented and fronted for this kind of assault on the people. I mean, when he came in, and I call him Black Giuliani because he has brought back much of Giuliani's discredited police state programming, stop and frisk, bringing back special units like the street crimes unit that gunned down Amadou Diallo in a hail of 41 bullets. And around this case, when he was asked about the killing of Jordan Neely, he said, well, we don't know what happened. Let's let the investigation run his course. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, we do know what happened because we saw the video. We saw that Jordan Neely was not attacking anybody, and this Marine came up behind him and put a chokehold on him, the chokeholds that they teach Marines and other members of the U.S. military to use to kill people. That's what he did to Jordan Neely. He used the killing tactics and skills that the U.S. military had instilled in him on this brother. And then he goes on to say, we can't have homeless and mentally disturbed people on our subway. Not saying that he's going to provide any housing for anybody or any mental health care, but that we can't have them on our subways. And when asked, what do you say about people taking the law into their own hands? He says, well, you can't, and doing things like this Marine did to Jordan Neely. He said, well, we can't say what someone should or should not do in every circumstance. And again, we can say something. We can say that people should not kill people for no reason, because Jordan Neely did not attack anyone. He had not threatened anyone. There was no crime that he was in the process of committing. So there was no justification for what was done with him. But Mayor Adams very clearly would not say that this was wrong, that something should be done about it. And this is the system saying, because look, they've arrested a number of protesters calling for this Marine, this killing Marine, to be arrested and charged for Jordan's murder. They've arrested those protesters. They still have not arrested the murderer of Jordan Neely.
You mentioned that Jordan Neely wasn't threatening, but there were reports that he was throwing things and he threw his coat. And there've been he has a history, and there have been incidents on the subway where persons have been attacked. So do you think all that contributed to him being, the attempt for him to be subdued, and he ended up being, losing his life?
Well, look, Jordan Neely did throw his coat. He threw it on the ground. He threw it on the floor of the subway. He didn't throw it at somebody. And there has been a whole lot of whipping up of fear and hatred targeting homeless people, and especially, let's be real about it, Black homeless people, Latino homeless people, people of color on the subway. And you have to say, okay, it's not like I'm not saying there's no crime in the subway. However, Jordan Neely had not committed any crimes. And they were very quick to tell you about his arrest record. Mm-hmm. But when the Marine choked Jordan Neely, he knew nothing about Jordan Neely's arrest record.
That's a good point.
All that he knew was that there was this guy who seemed to have mental challenges and who was hungry and thirsty. And he stepped up to choke the guy, and not to just tackle him so he wouldn't hurt anybody. He continued to choke him with a chokehold that he should have known could have led to Jordan Neely's death, and in fact did lead to Jordan Neely's death. And he did it for a number of minutes.
Right.
About 15 minutes. So do you think, based on the fact that he's a Marine and he's trained, he should have known better?
I mean, look, it was a long time ago when I was in the Army, but I know that chokehold. They taught it to us, and you were supposed to use it to stop a threat to your life or someone else's. And you were taught how you could choke someone to death in much less time than he choked Jordan Neely. So his military experience was much more recent than mine. I was in the military back in the 1960s. But I remembered that chokehold, and I know what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to kill people. And he should have known that that's what he was doing. And in fact, someone in the subway did say to him, hey man, you're going to catch a murder charge. You're going to kill him. Now, I think people in the subway should have done more than that to try to stop him, but somebody did raise to him that you could kill this man, and he kept choking anyway.
I think you bring up some very important points. Being poor is not a crime. And at the end of the day, they're criminalizing a man who was essentially crying out for help while being on the subway. He's saying, look, I'm
Yeah.
hungry, I'm tired, I am without a job. And it's not like he's new to the subway. He's been there doing Michael Jackson impressions, trying to at least get some money for at least a sandwich, you know, a drink, anything. And in the end, he was criminalized because of his circumstances, being poor and being, unfortunately, mentally ill.
No, that was exactly what went down. And the media needs to be questioned in relation to this as well, because there's actually no reason to publicize his arrest record.
Right.
Because that was no factor in this. No one in that subway car, you know, he wasn't wearing a sign saying, I've been arrested 40 times, or what it was for, you know, because if you're homeless and poor and riding the subway, you can get arrested for that.
Right.
You know, and especially in this Eric Adams time, because he has had his police, when he talked about dealing with homelessness and crime in the subway, his police took 1,000 people into custody over the first few months of this year as his program for dealing with homelessness and what he called crime in the subway.
And in essence, in the end, society essentially made choices that put him on the train in that position in the first place. Had there been better programs in place, he wouldn't have been in that the unfortunate situation that led to him losing his life.
No, that's exactly it. And again, we go back to the system that we live under, and it does not function in order to meet the needs of the people. It functions in order to keep up the profit margins of the large corporations, of the people who own and control everything in this country, and basically run the country, rule it, the ruling class. That's why I say we need a revolution to deal with this situation.
How would young people go about that revolution? You know, we grow up, you see time and time again, legislation does not work. Protesting seems to have a good effect for a little while until it dies down, and then we're back to the same situation again in 6 months, where another life is lost due to their circumstances. What is the layout plan for a revolution?
Okay, you raised a very big question. Let me do two things. The first thing I want to do is to tell people that the RevComs have put out a broadsheet that is titled, We Are the RevComs, and we are working urgently right now to get ready and in position for a revolution to bring in a totally different and far better way for people to live. People can get that at the website revcom.us, revcom.us. And in terms of it, and it lays out what we're about and also how we are going about that revolution, what it aims to do and to bring into being, including speaking to a constitution for a future socialist republic in North America that was authored by the revolutionary leader, Bib Avakian. Now, as to how we go about it, one of the things it says in the broadsheet is we have a strategic approach of fight the power and transform the people for revolution, mobilizing people to stand up against these attacks by the system and bringing to them the understanding that these problems we're dealing with flow from the way this capitalist imperialist system works. Its very nature. You can't reform it. You can't elect somebody to change it and make it work for you. You have to get rid of it through revolution. And that process of mobilizing people to fight the power, fight what the attacks that the system brings down, and bringing out the understanding that we need a revolution, what a revolution is all about, the kind of society it would bring into being. That's our approach to preparing and getting ready for revolution.
Mr. Carl Dix, thank you so much. I've learned a lot. You've definitely inspired me. Thank you, and we hope to have you again.
Thank you for having me on.
People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's people, power, and politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.